A shakeup at the top in men's basketball, and a host of challengers in the mix for the women. You're watching the NEC On the Run podcast on NEC Front Row. Coming to you next. Welcome back for this week's NEC On the Run podcast. I'm John Kelly Jr., joined alongside Ron Ratner. And let's get started with our NEC Fast Break this week. Ron, what a week it was in men's basketball. Bryant lost 2 straight games after being undefeated in conference play, and now Sacred Heart and Robert Morris joined the party.
Yeah, I think we have a logjam at the top. Joe DeSantis, during the broadcast of Saturday's Sacred Heart Monmouth game, ended the broadcast by saying you could spell the NEC Parity. And I think that's what you're seeing now. You're seeing a number of contending teams. And as we move into February, I think it's just going to be crazy. So you have 3 teams tied at first now. Brian, as you said, started off undefeated 6-0, took losses to 2 good teams in Sacred Heart and LIU Brooklyn. But they're right there. Robert Morris has now won 6 straight. They're getting some phenomenal shooting from Carvel Anderson from 3-point range, and as always, they'll get steady play from Velton Jones, who's a multi-time NEC All-Star. For Sacred Heart, now you're seeing a team that was in flux at the beginning of the year with their 2 starting guards out for the season with injuries. And Justin Swidowski, who's their starting man in the pivot, he's been in and out of the lineup all season long. But they've found their way now. We're calling it the 3 Gs: Shane Gibson, Phil Gaetano, and Steve Glowiak. Shane Gibson, as we know, he's one of the top scorers in NEC history. You have Phil Gaetano, who's now one of the tops in the nation in assists, only a sophomore point guard, and Steve Glowiak, another in-state kid who's just lighting it up from 3-point range. So the chemistry is starting to come for Sacred Heart now and Dave Bike. And now look what you have. You got 3 teams at the top, and then bubbling right under, you have LIU and Wagner just a game back.
Speaking of the LIU Brooklyn Blackbirds, the reason why, after an 0-3 conference start, they've won 5 straight, including beating Bryant 79-78. Reason why, Ron? A plus 52 rebounding advantage.
Yeah, they're getting it done. Look, when Julian Boyd goes down for the season, you have to sit and you have to rethink everything you're doing, and you have to rethink your strategy. They've managed to sort of navigate those unsteady waters towards the end of non-conference play and the beginning of conference play, and now they've reinvented themselves, so to speak, and they've found that chemistry that Sacred Heart also has now. They've won 5 straight games, and the wins that they had last week were legitimate road wins. They won the Battle of Brooklyn game against a very good St. Francis Brooklyn team, then go into a hostile environment at Bryant, place packed to the gills at the Chase Center. What an atmosphere. And in my mind, from the games I've seen this year, it was the best game I've seen all year. And they win a 1-point game. They kind of escape, come back to Brooklyn with a 5-game win streak, and they have players who have been there before. They have the Jamal Alasawirs, the Jason Brickmans, and the C.J. Garners, who are part of their 2 title teams. And now they've found a way to win, and I think they're going to be tough as we move on during league play.
It wasn't just a week of fantastic finishes and conference jockeying. Some milestones, Ron, were achieved as well.
Yeah, we have. There are 3 players who are just rising up those charts and in the NEC record book. You have Shane Gibson, who we spoke about earlier, has now made it to number 10 on the all-time scoring list, over 1,800 points, and he has a real good chance at becoming only the 4th player in NEC history to reach 2,000 points, which is, when you think about a 32-year history, that's quite a feat. You have Velton Jones needs 1 point to join the 1,500-point, 500 assist club. also littered with all-time greats like Rob Monroe and Greg Harris, Tristan Blackwood, Jeremy Good. These are names familiar to NEC basketball fans. And then, of course, you have Jason Brickman. Today, just named by Jay Billis, one of the top, named the 6th best passer in the nation in his ESPN column. You see him now 4th all-time in assists. He only needs a handful more to get to 2. And if he keeps it up by midway through his senior year, he'll be the NEC's all-time assist leader. So kudos to all 3 of them.
And on television this week, starting with Thursday, you'll have Bryant. You have Fairleigh Dickinson, first place Bryant. The Knights, Fairleigh Dickinson, an improving team.
Yeah, I mean under Greg Vitrone, they're much better. Their backcourt with Melquan Boulding and Lonnie Robinson is actually one of the better ones in the league, and they have Keanu Rockford, who is certainly making a play for all conference status up front. You have a Bryant team's lost 2 in a row, but 2 tough games. I think they're going to be all fired up. This is going to be a good one on Fox College Sports and ESPN3 this coming Thursday.
And at 3 p.m. on Saturday, get to your television a rematch of the last 2 NEC men's titles between Robert Morris and LIU Brooklyn.
Yeah, they're quite a distance apart from each other, but it's a really good rivalry. They've played each other in the last 2 championship games. LIU coming out on top twice, so you know that Velton Jones and Andy Toole are going to come into Brooklyn looking to get that win, because these 2 teams may see each other again down the line. What you'll see is some of the best players in the conference going at it before a national audience on ESPNU. It's a big game for both teams, both coming in to this Thursday's play with lengthy win streaks. So it's sort of, you have a collision course coming maybe on Saturday. It's a game I'm really looking forward to.
Great insight, Ron. For Ron Ratner, I'm John Kelly Jr. here with this version of the NEC On the Run podcast. Hello, I'm NEC-TV correspondent John Kelly Jr., joined by Ralph Ventre for this women's basketball edition of NEC On the Run podcast. And Ralph, last night, a lot of rivalry games played on the hardwood. Which ones jumped out to you?
Well, it was Quinnipiac and Central Connecticut. To me, that was the game of the night, John. You had the Blue Devils at 5-2 in league play, looking for the upset in Hamden. Quinnipiac, of course, the NEC preseason favorite, started 7-0 in league play. And the Blue Devils were there step for step with the Bobcats. Jacqueline Babe of Central poured in 30 points, but in the end, it just wasn't enough, and Quinnipiac defended its home court and moved to 8-0 in league play. So it was a great game between 2 Constitution State rivals, and the Bobcats in the end prevailed, and they are the lone remaining NEC unbeaten.
And they love that view from the top. Up below them, several contenders are stacking up.
Yeah, John, as you mentioned in your open, there are a number of challengers building up there beneath Quinnipiac in the NEC standings. At 6-2, you have St. Francis U. They scored a big win over Robert Morris in the Keystone State Clash on Monday night. So you have St. Francis in second, but then in third, you have a 4-way logjam. 4 teams tied with a 5-3 league record in third place. Any one of them can come out of there. In that group, of course, are the defending champion Sacred Heart Pioneers. So you have 5 teams there who are within striking distance right now of Quinnipiac. 2 of the teams that are playing really well are, of course, St. Francis U and the aforementioned SHU Pioneers. The reason why I bring those 2 teams up as far as challengers to Quinnipiac is because both of those teams, John, they faced some adversity early on in this conference schedule, and both teams, like true champions, responded. They answered the bell. You look at Sacred Heart, they started 1-3 in league play. That was a start that they had never experienced in their NEC history. So backs against the wall, 1-3. What do? They come right out and they win 4 straight. They're 5-3, and they're on their way to challenging the Bobcats. Now, St. Francis U, they started off at 4-0 in league play. However, they dropped back-to-back games 2 weeks ago. So they're coming off back-to-back losses. They take care of Wagner at home, and then rival Robert Morris comes to town. They earn a hard-fought victory over Robert Morris, and they're 6-2 in sole possession of second. So St. Francis, Sacred Heart, they're in that mix. They've already shown they can move past adversity, and it should make for an exciting second half of the NEC schedule.
And it certainly is going to be an exciting second half. But, Ralph, some seasonal surprises this year on the hardwood for the women.
Well, the number one surprise, John, will start and stop right there. It's in Brooklyn, St. Francis, Brooklyn. Now, the Terriers are a team who have struggled in recent years. Last year, they managed only 4 wins the entire season. This year, Coach John Thurston has the Terriers with 7 wins overall. They won 3 non-league games. That tripled their non-league win total from last season. And they've started 4-4 in league play. They had a convincing win over borough rival LIU Brooklyn in the Battle of Brooklyn on Monday night. They're 4-4 in league play, and they are right in the mix to end that NEC tournament drought. Of course, they have not been to the postseason since 2008. But right now, the way they're playing, it's looking pretty good for Thurston's Terriers. So hats off to St. Francis, Brooklyn. Let's see if they can keep it going. Of course, we have 10 NEC games remaining.
On television this week at noon on Saturday, LIU Brooklyn will take on Robert Morris in the women's column. Ralph, any other matchups this week that will provide more drama in the standings?
2 other matchups, John, you have to keep an eye out for. On Saturday, you have Sacred Heart and Mount St. Mary's, 2 5-3 teams going head-to-head. And then on Monday night, Central Connecticut and Monmouth go at it. And, of course, Central Connecticut and Monmouth heading into the weekend, both at 5-3. So that 4-way logjam for third place, we may have some movement in the standings just because of the head-to-head matchups this weekend. So those will be 2 that you want to focus on in addition to the TV game between Robert Morris and LIU Brooklyn.
Always great insight from the best-dressed man in the NEC. For Ralph Ventre, I'm John Kelly Jr. Thank you for tuning in to this women's basketball segment of the NEC On the Run podcast.
This is Ralph Ventre here from the NEC, and we have a special guest this morning. It's Coach Vanessa Blair. Vanessa Blair, of course, the newest inductee on the women's basketball side in the Northeast Conference Hall of Fame. So with that said, congratulations, Coach Blair. We appreciate your time this morning. Can you just talk to us a little bit about your reaction when you first heard this news that you were going to be enshrined in the Northeast Conference Hall of Fame?
Well, I was absolutely taken back, very excited, and I told Ron when I called him to thank the Northeast Conference for considering me, was that you do things at a time in your life where you don't even expect that there's going to be a reward for it. I did everything I did because I just love the game. So to get rewarded for it was just, just shocking. So I was very thankful. And then my second immediate thought was Coach Bill Sheehan. He was my head coach there. He passed away suddenly. But without him, I would have never had the opportunity to accept the full scholarship to Mount St. Mary's, to even have the ability to don the blue and white. And then I thought about my teammates. Ralph, they were the most unselfish players I ever played with, and they always were supportive of me and pushing me and, just wanting the best. And, sometimes in this day and age, that's tough to find, but they were so unselfish. And then my family. My dad was a high school coach for 30 years and coached me, so I was kind of hand-delivered to Bill Sheehan. So from a male to a male, a dad to a dad, and I just thank, my parents for always being there to support me in my goals. So those were really my initial thoughts. I always believe you never get anywhere by yourself, and I may be accepting this award personally, but it's an award that I accept on behalf of a lot of people who helped me get to where I am.
Well, you mentioned your teammates and you mentioned Coach Sheehan. Of course, your teammates and Coach Sheehan and yourself were pioneers, really, of NEC women's basketball. The league started in 86-87, and then Mount St. Mary's joined in 89-90, and you were on that first Mount St. Mary's team to play in the NEC, one of the first, in one of the first years of Northeast Conference women's basketball. So can you just talk a little bit about that, what the NEC was like at the time, and also maybe touch on a little more playing for someone like Coach Sheehan, such a highly regarded individual in the women's game?
Oh, absolutely. Speaking of just pioneers, I think before you turn to go Division I, you've had to have some massive success at Division II. And at the Division II level, Coach Sheehan and his teams really racked up a lot of victories. He had some extremely talented players. And so, you may say, oh, Vanessa, you were a pioneer of this, but I stood on the shoulders of some great players in Kim Rock, Zena Edwards, Tracy Bradson, Becky Lovett, Teresa O'Donnell. Those were some great pioneers that came through Mount St. Mary's that were in Division II that allowed us to take the jump into Division I. So, the pioneer of that, I had a lot to prove because there were a lot of young players that I played with that were in that Division II era that helped propel us there. But Coach Sheehan was masterful at X's and O's. That was the biggest thing that he did well. He was just very, they always say basketball is chess, not checkers. It's not an easy game. If you move this piece, you got to make sure you account for this piece. And he was always very good at making sure that we knew what we had to do offensively and making adjustments defensively. And it was not only great to play from him, but it was an honor. He racked up so many awards as a coach coming from high school at the Holy Cross level where he went, I think, 100 games before he lost. So he was an excellent coach on every level that he played, and he took us into Division I, and we just dominated in those early years.
Now, you mentioned Kim Rock, and then, of course, after you, Susie Rowlick. What does it mean to be a part of such a great tradition that is Mount St. Mary's women's basketball?
Well, I felt like when I came there as a player, I knew that they were going Division I. I knew that they wanted to have players like myself to come there and make those early years great years for the Mount. And it was like passing the baton. Kim Rock passed the baton to me. I passed the baton to Susie Rowlick and so on and so forth, the Amy Langvilles, those great players that came, the Kia Williams, the Megan Gardners. Like that baton has just continued to pass, because I always told my players after I played and then when I was coaching them that you always stand on the shoulders of someone that has come before you. Make them proud.
Well, you've certainly made a lot of people proud in the NEC and at the Mount, Coach. Before we let you go, I just want to ask you, is there a favorite moment or a particular instance from your career or from your time at the Mount that stands out? Or is there a certain accomplishment of you or your teams from that time that you really are proud of still to this day?
You know what, Ralph, there are so many times you look back, like when I got that call, I told you one of my thoughts were about my teammates and how great it was to play for them. And I just can never remember a time that I did not want to be with them and a part of them. Even in the losses, I took it hard because I felt like I let them down. In the victories, it was a chance for us to spread it around and the joy that was felt. We would have loved to have gone to the tournament and to the championship. I don't think we had that automatic bid initially when we got into the league. But just winning those titles together, regular season champs with my teammates was some of the fondest memories that I'll take with me.
Yes, no, and you're right, Coach, about the automatic bid. The NEC wasn't awarded that until the 93-94 season. But sure enough, the first ever recipient of the NEC's automatic bid was Mount St. Mary's. And they went ahead and played Iowa in the NCAA East region. So obviously you helped lay the groundwork for that. But with that said, we really appreciate your time today, Coach. Again, we're talking with two-time NEC Women's Basketball Player of the Year, Vanessa Blair, a former head coach at Mount St. Mary's, and now the head coach at Bethune-Cookman University down in Florida. and the newest member of the Northeast Conference Hall of Fame. Coach Blair, thanks again for your time, and from all of us at the NEC, a very big congratulations to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And this is the NEC Nine, the top 9 plays of the week on the hardwood. Kicking it off at number 9, 2 follow-up slam dunks. Quinnipiac's Ousmane Dramé finishes a missed finger roll, and Central Connecticut State's Terrell Allen swoops in and flushes. At number 8 for Quinnipiac, Alicia Barron with an emphatic block shot against FDU on Saturday. Number 7, reigning NEC Defensive Player of the Year, Kenneth Ortiz of Wagner steals and lays in a game-winning bucket to beat Mount St. Mary's. At number 6, Robert Morris's Carvel Anderson heats it up with 19 straight points in 5 minutes last Thursday versus St. Francis U. At number 5, check out this behind-the-back pass by Mamas Dion Nesbitt on NEC-TV this past Saturday. Number 4, Mount St. Mary's Sydney Henderson with a great wraparound pass to Tara Lonergan, who lays it up Monday night versus Wagner. At number 3, Bryant's Alex Francis throws it down against LIU Brooklyn. At number 2, the game winner from Robert Morris's Lou Matali.
Make that 6. Matali, 5 seconds to go. 4. Drives the lane by herself, and it goes in, and 2 seconds to go. And Matali takes the game-leading layup with 6 seconds left.
To cap it off at number 1, LIU Brooklyn's Troy Joseph with a thunderous slam in a 79-78 win over Bryant.
Gardner up the floor to the right. Gardner skip past Brickman. 3 in the air, missed it. Rebound dunked home by Joseph.
That's it for this week's edition of the NEC On the Run Hoops podcast. I'm John Kelly Jr. See you next week on NECFrontRow.com.